All right, my friends, welcome to the next episode here, the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A, where we are simplifying fitness to make it easier, more effective, and fit your hustle and bustle of your holiday lifestyle. As always, I'm Matt Schifferly from the Red Delta Project. Today's episode is, like last week, sponsored by the new push-pull squat video series over on the Red Delta Project YouTube channel, where I'm coming out with 6 individual workout programs now throughout the end of the holiday season, or until December 24th, in other words. And that's going to give you new workouts that focus on the 3 fundamental movements that are responsible for building most of your muscle and strength, aka push, pull, and squat, as if you couldn't have guessed that by the title. The link to the very first video in the first round is down below in the description. And of course, it's all for free. It doesn't cost you anything. And those are my way of helping to give back to the RDP community here at the beginning of, or at the end of the year. So let's jump right into today's topic, which is kind of an Ask Me Anything episode. So feel free to jump in, ask your questions, whatever you want to know. I'll be my best to answer for you. But today's also a little bit of a holiday survival guide, because this is the time of year where I find even the most disciplined individuals have their diet and exercise habits tested like crazy. And even those who have the most motivation and most discipline, they fall like dominoes as soon as they have that one holiday cookie, or they skip a workout and things are going crazy at work and all helter-skelter comes down. And a lot of people are quick to blame the holidays, but really the holidays are not to blame. The holidays are actually just testing what's going on. It's not something that's actually bad. It's testing and exposing weaknesses and problems that are in the plan you have. So today we're going to be talking about not only how to make your plan more robust for this time of year, but the entire year, so you're also not derailed by things like vacations, holidays, weddings, birthdays, the Super Bowl, and all these other things that come up throughout the year that can also test and erode your best habits. So people coming on in here, Joseph is here, Leo, good to see you, my friend. Michael, Drop Weight Daddy, Sniff Rat, man, now everybody's coming in droves. Thank you very much for coming on in, folks. And as always, these are audio podcasts. The audio is released on your podcast directory shortly after this live feed. So if you miss out a bunch of it, you can always go to your podcast directory and get those. And it's also available on the Red Delta Project YouTube channel under the live tab or the RDP podcast playlist. Let me grab a little bit of tea here and let's get started. So probably the biggest reason why a lot of people have trouble this time of year with sticking to their diet and exercise plans is simply because a lot of times it's just too strict and rigid. And it's not that it's a bad plan or a good plan or anything about that nature. It's just that it's kind of one of these things that's structured to demand a lot of your time and a lot of your attention and your energy. And these resources can be in short supply when life gets a little helter-skelter. You've got travel, you've got family coming to town, you got a million things to do on your to-do list every single weekend. And what ends up happening is because your plan requires so much energy and attention that you find yourself quickly saying, well, I can't stick to the perfect diet. I can't stick to my workout program as it is written. And a lot of times people will tell me, they'll be like, I'm just going to take a break. I'm just going to kind of push the pause button on everything until New Year's, or shortly after New Year's. And I understand where this is coming from because it's very tempting to do that. It's like, I'm just going to take the pressure off. I got a lot of stuff going on, to hell with it kind of thing. But this is one of the biggest mistakes that often derails people in a much longer term, because a lot of times people don't ever actually quit diet and exercise. They just, quote, take that break, and they just never get back to it. They always have something coming up. They've got business meetings, they've got travel, they've got the kids are in school, and Timmy is sick, and now I've got this ankle injury. There's always something coming up that derails that perfect, structured, rigid plan. And as a result, it's very rarely ever put into practice. And so you spend most of your time not doing anything at all. So what can you do about this sort of thing? Well, a lot of it boils down to just simply having a more flexible and freestyle approach. One of the terms that I've been recognizing is consistent upon all of my programs and approaches that I use here at RDP is something I like to call structured flexibility. Because if we have a plan that has far too much structure, it takes away the ability to adapt and modify itself according to your circumstances. And of course, your circumstances are always going to change. Life is always evolving and changing. Things are always going to be moving in one direction or another. And so whenever we've got something that is too strict and rigid, it fails to bend, and therefore most of the time it just ends up breaking. So, all right, why do we adhere to such strictness? Well, largely because it gives us a feeling of sense of control, false control, mind you, because we think, okay, if I can get things perfect and I have everything spelled out to the letter as far as my diet and exercise program of exactly what I do and how I do it, then that's going to give me control over the thing that we feel we need control of, our weight, our strength, our health, our physical appearance, whatever the case may be. Because fundamentally, that's why most of us are in fitness to begin with, is we want more control over those things we feel we don't have much control of. And so when the plan comes out, it's like, okay, here's exactly what you're going to do to the letter. This is exactly what you eat. This is exactly how you train. This is the exercises you do in this order, this number, sets and reps and everything. And it's very enticing, but it's a complete myth. Because most of the time, these details in the strict plan are nothing more than just an estimated guess of what you actually really need. And most of the time, it's actually wrong. It's kind of like me telling you to drive your car at one speed, 35 miles an hour. I want you to drive your car 35 miles an hour, regardless of conditions, regardless of its rush hour traffic. I don't care if you're on the interstate or the Autobahn where there is no speed limit. 35 miles an hour is the one and only speed you can ever drive at. Of course, that would be lunacy. It'd be too slow in most cases, too fast in other cases. And no matter when and where you found yourself, chances are you're probably going at the wrong speed most of the time. And that's what happens when we adhere to these strict plans. And even worse, it may give us a sense of control at first, but it actually takes away control from you because you're not making decisions anymore. You're not assessing your situation and saying, okay, based on my circumstances, what are the best things for me to do? No, you don't care about what the best thing is. You don't care about what the best way to eat for those circumstances, the best way to train for those circumstances actually are. You only have one game plan to play. You got one card in the poker game. And of course, that's no way to win. So what we want to do is, of course, have an objective-based approach to diet and exercise, where instead of saying this is exactly how you're supposed to eat and train, what are the objectives we're after? And then doing whatever you can and however you can do it in those circumstances to best achieve those objectives. And yes, you're going to train differently and eat differently in different circumstances. Sometimes you eat more, sometimes you eat less. Sometimes you eat a lot more of one type of food. Sometimes it'll be another type of food. Sometimes you may work out for an hour and a half. Sometimes it may only be 10 minutes. But that falsehood of control of the strict plan sets up this idea that it's only effective if you do it one way, that your diet is only healthy if you eat one particular way, that your workout is only effective if you train one particular way, which of course is complete baloney. Because if that were the case, then everybody on the planet would be in horrible shape unless they trained that one way, which of course doesn't happen. There are billions of people out there who are lean, healthy, strong, ripped, jacked. They're all in great shape. And there's not a single diet or exercise plan that is consistent among the majority of them. So we want to recognize this to give ourselves the flexibility. And I'll be discussing a little bit more on that in a little bit. But let's get to some of these questions here. Dan is asking, hey, Matt, loving the ISO chain. Great. Wonderful, my friend. Been doing 3x15 for a while. If I switch to a strength-based program, will I get carryover to some hypertrophy? Probably. That's one of the things about strength and hypertrophy in general is there's not a dividing line. Again, this is usually a misconception that comes from, that one perfect diet or exercise plan of, oh, it only counts if you do it this one way. It's kind of like borders between states, especially out here in the west of the United States. I mean, back east where I'm from, the borders were things like rivers and stuff. So it was actually a geographical marker. But now I'm in Colorado. So if I drive north or south, like I go up to Wyoming sometimes, there's nothing there that says I'm in Wyoming, except maybe a welcome to Wyoming sign. The actual border between the states is only in our imagination. And it's the exact same thing in a lot of diet and exercise rules. I grew up with this idea of like, okay, you train, 5 repetitions and you're training for strength. 6 to 8 is kind of a mix. And then if you're doing 8 to 12, that's hypertrophy, as if going from 9 to 8 repetitions actually mattered, right? If you were training and you said, okay, I didn't do 5 reps today, but I actually got 7. Oh, shoot, I'm not going to build the strength at all with that, right? It's a complete waste of my time if I want to build strength. Of course not. These divisional lines between what makes it effective and what isn't for certain goals is mostly imaginary. It's kind of like on a color spectrum, where you've got a classic color wheel. There's no dividing line between different colors. It's just kind of fading from one to the other. So to answer your question, yes, of course, you're going to get carryover. Whenever you're training for strength, you're going to get a hypertrophic stimulus to at least some degree. Same as the opposite. If you're training for hypertrophy, you're going to get strength to some degree. And this is important to recognize in my push-pull squat program because they have a very similar structure to them, like my grind style calisthenics program, which has different phases. And those phases are not necessarily saying you're only training for this one objective, you're not getting anything else from it. It's just, what are you focusing on? So the strength or proficiency phase in the beginning has low repetitions and you're managing your fatigue. And then you've got your hypertrophy or finisher phase where it's the opposite. But it's not like you're not going to build muscle if you're training for strength, or strength if you're training for muscle. It's just creating a slight emphasis on one side or the other. So yeah, definitely switch things up. I will say though, when it comes to building programming your isometrics, like with the iso chain, it really isn't that important too much to a large degree, because with isometrics, you don't have that tension and duration trade-off to make. Because with dynamic exercise, you have to make that trade-off. Like, I want to go for a long period of time. Okay, well, you have to use light resistance in order to do that. So that's how you compromise the strength. Because if you want to do an exercise for 30 reps, you can't use a high level of resistance, and therefore you're theoretically not generating a lot of tension, AE strength, in the muscle. So you have to make that trade-off. And on the other hand, it's like, well, I want a lot of tension in the muscle, so I'm going to use a lot of resistance. Okay, great. But you're not going to be able to do that for 30 reps. You're going to do it for like 4. It's like, okay, so I've got to make that trade-off. That's why the push-pull squat and grind style calisthenics has the phases in the workouts. So that way you don't have to compromise. You're getting one of each. But with isometrics, one of the great things is you're always working at maximum tension because you don't have to have that compromise. So if you are holding an exercise for 15 seconds, you're going at max tension and then it's decreasing a little bit. And then if you hold it for, let's say, 30 seconds and you're really going to burn out the muscle more, you're still doing the same thing to the muscle for that first 15 seconds. So it's not like you have to really do anything that different. The only difference is fatigue. Are you creating more fatigue for a longer period of time? Yeah, theoretically. But are you compromising strength? Not necessarily. You can still have that high level of intensity with the longer durations, for sure. All right. Oh, here's one I always like to answer. One piece of gym equipment on a deserted island. I like how you said desert island. Boy, I'd love to have a desert island. Like, it's like Candyland. It's all cupcakes and cookies and cream pies. It'd be awesome. But I know what you mean. Deserted island. Very good. Well, I would kind of have a cheeky answer to that and be like, my piece of equipment would be a boat. Yeah. What? You can't work out on a boat? No, it's seriously. Oh, everybody's doing it. It's great. It'd be a cruise ship. Get off the damn island. But I know what you mean. So one of my all-time go-tos, of course, are my suspension setups, particularly the ones from NOSC that are my all-time favorite. They're just some of the best designed suspension equipment out there. Links are actually down below. I put those down below for reference if you want to check those out. It's just, they're very simple, they're very versatile, they're very well designed, and they work really, really well. And basically, the way I bring about the perspective of suspension equipment in my book, Suspension Calisthenics, is those are basically a weight machine that fits in your pocket. Take me to a gym and bring me to every single weight machine in the gym, and I can duplicate what the body does on that weight machine with just a set of those straps. So that's pretty much what I would be using. But yeah, I would try and game the system a little bit and get off the damn island. Jackie Wacky, it's good to see you again, my friend, with the jacked up Garfield and the avatar. Yo, Matt, recovering steadily from a meniscus tear at my left knee a week ago. Ouch, my friend. I'm glad you're on the recovery. was doing rows with a bar and felt my forearms getting a lot of the brunt and not enough back. Could be my grip. Any thoughts? Good question. Possibly. However, it's funny you bring this up because I've been working with a gentleman who I just saw today, and his grip was oftentimes a liability in his pull chain exercises. And his grip has gotten much stronger, but it's still burning out a lot quicker. And what we discovered was that one of the tendencies of just how he uses his muscles is that he just death grips whatever he's holding on to like crazy for whatever reason. So when we're doing an exercise and we need to use some tension in a muscle that's supportive, right? Like our grip, we want to make sure we're using enough tension for sure. But if you're always totally death gripping the hell out of that thing, then you're going to burn out your forearms and your grip in record time no matter what, because as your grip gets stronger, you're not using that into endurance. You're just using a tighter and tighter grip, which in the interest of working your back probably isn't going to be very beneficial. So you can try using like a hook grip or a thumbless grip when you're doing your rows. That can be very helpful because it's just harder to death grip it when your thumbs are not wrapped around it. The other thing to consider too is make sure you're packing your shoulders pretty tight when you're doing this exercise. You're pulling your shoulder blades down and back. So it could be that your back just isn't quite getting the attention and it's a little bit more in the arms, especially if you have an overhand or a pronated grip. That's going to work your forearm, your biceps brachialis a little bit more, and that could be burning out a little bit faster too. So see if you can have a pulling variation that's got a different grip angle and see if that makes a difference, and pack your shoulders down away from your ears as much as you can for that. Coming up on this, EE is also asking a similar question: rings or pull-up bar for the island? Depends if there are trees. Oh, that's a very good point too, because if there's nothing to hang suspension equipment from, you're not using it very much, of course. So yes, I'm assuming that I can hang from something, and that would be the key. However, if there's no place to hang and I can't hang my suspension, then that would be just a simple pull-up unit, like my body weight master here from Dragon Door that I was lucky enough to pick it up when they were still in production, because that'll give me a lot of variability there. And I can also use it for utilitarian purposes like drying fish on it and stuff, because I got to eat. All right, so let's get a little bit more into the topic. Survival guide. We're talking about flexibility in our diet and exercise approach. And that probably, if anything, is going to give you the best approach. It gives you flexibility, but it also keeps you on track, because when we have a structured, flexible approach, then that gives you the ability to say, okay, here's the objectives and things that I need to go in this general direction with. But at the same time, it gives you freedom to fill in the gaps. It's kind of like coloring in a coloring book. You've got a dinosaur there and it's got all its lines and stripes and stuff. So you have the structure of the lines of the coloring book, but at the same time, you can color it any way you like. You can make it look any which way from here till Tuesday. It's all down to your imagination and your creativity. And that's what structured, flexible approaches that we have here at Red Delta Project allow you to do. Case in point, my 3P strategy for diet. Every time you're having a meal, do you have a protein source, a plant source, and manage your portion control? So you're eating enough, but not too much to basically satisfy your appetite. That will be enough structure for most people to have a pretty darn healthy diet right there. Just that. But you're free to color that in however you want. You can do eat whatever foods you like. You can eat whatever type of style you like. You can mix it with any type of dietary preference. You can do it with vegan, vegetarian, paleo. You can do that stuff. You don't have to do any of that stuff if you don't want it. You can apply it to any sort of circumstances. Like you go over to my parents for a Christmas meal. It's going to be hard to stick to any sort of fad diet, but 3P works perfectly well. So things like that are going to be the way to go. Case in point also is the, push-pull squat program that I'm coming out with. It's almost not even a program, the way I like to put it. It's not a program, it's approach. Because we don't need another program out there, folks. We sure as hell don't need another diet. And if diet or a specific program was going to be the thing that really solved our problems, we would have solved it by now. But I think it's fairly clear that's not the real answer we need. But when we have those general approaches, like, okay, focus on pushing, pulling, and squatting movements, and then all the other stuff is accessory stuff that you spend like 20% of your time on, that's going to give you the freedom to do whatever kind of exercise you like. Free weights, machines, cables, bands, calisthenics, isometrics, whatever you want. Sure, great, go for it. But at the same time, it gives you the approach of make sure you're working on some sort of strength or proficiency at first. And then once you start to fatigue with that, burn out the muscles if you're interested in endurance or hypertrophy. And you can use whatever you like. You can use whatever time you like. You can do it with a micro workout format where it's like 5-10 minutes, or you can do a full on half an hour or an hour or hour and a half long workout if you like. It's all up to you and how you do it. It's one of those things that gives you the freedom to do what you want to do, but the structure to guide you into the direction you need to go. Santiago, good to see you, my friend. Hey, Matt, have you seen the last video of Renaissance periodization about muscle tension? I think it would really help your chain training approach. I haven't, but thank you very much. So if you could you find the link to that and email it to me at reddeltaproject@gmail.com or DM me at the Red Delta Project Instagram? It would be greatly appreciated. Let me take a screenshot here of the name real quick so I can also just look for it myself. That's the thing is I have people all the time saying, you got to check out this podcast, that podcast. And I don't know, maybe I'm just totally inept when it comes to searching things, but I can't find things to save my life. They're like, oh yeah, you got to find this character on the Joe Rogan podcast, what he said. And I can't find that episode to save my life. So if you could, please do send it my way. I would really, really appreciate it. Oh man, we got lots of people coming in. Let me get on to some of these questions. Let's see. Jim is saying, when performed optimally, do calisthenics teach the body to move more efficiently? Good question. Ideally, all exercise should teach the body to move efficiently, which is an awesome, wonderful, great thing. But a lot of people say that's a bad thing. Let me explain. You see, in our fitness culture, there's this idea that when the body is training under any sort of circumstances, there's an initial period where it kind of just like shocks the system. Of course, because you're not used to it, right? It's a new thing, whatever that new thing is. And so there's that initial period where your body kind of gets hit and shocked, and it's like, oh my gosh, what the heck is this? And so through any type of repeated bout effect, which is why training works, is your nervous system adapts, your muscles adapt. Hell, even the skin on your hands adapts. You grow calluses and stuff. Everything in your body is geared to adapt to the functional demand of any kind of training you give it. And when it becomes more adaptive, yes, you become more efficient, which means it's easier for your body to do that thing, to be able to fulfill the functional demand of that exercise. And a lot of people, they look at that and they're like, oh, we don't want that. Oh my gosh, that'd be terrible, because then you're not working as hard, and then your muscles aren't working as hard, and you're not burning as much fat, and you're not burning as much calories and everything. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. And people avoid that efficiency like the plague. That's totally what you don't want to do. You want that efficiency because that is the sole reason why fitness works. If you can't become more efficient at what you're doing, you're always going to struggle to make any kind of progress in any way, shape, and form. The entire reason why exercise works is because you can become more efficient at doing the thing. Now, I know there's people like, well, so I'm burning less calories, I'm using less fat. Isn't that a bad thing? No, because what that means is now you can take your training to the next level. You can lift more weight. You can do more reps. You can go faster. You can run further. The thing is, it's always under the assumption that you're only going to ask your body to do the exact same thing every single day. However, most of us aren't like that. Like as a bike racer back in the day, my body adapted to the functional demands of mountain bike racing. Now, did I get more efficient at it? Absolutely. Was I getting less in shape for it? Absolutely not. Because as I got more efficient, what did I do? I said, great, now I can go one gear higher up the hill and I'm going to go faster. Now I can push even harder. And my training could have progression. And it's progression, my friends, that gets us bigger, faster, and stronger. It's progression that makes things effective. And you can only have that if you become more efficient. If you do not become more efficient, you have no chance of becoming bigger, faster, and stronger. You're always going to struggle for those first first levels of fitness. So we want efficiency. And yes, calisthenics, to answer your question in a roundabout way, absolutely can certainly do that. And if any kind of training will, because honestly, there's nothing special about calisthenics. It's nothing unique. It's nothing special. It's nothing different, which is why it's effective, just like everything else. Joseph Lewis. That's a great pick in your avatar, man. Very impressive back and triceps shot. Very nice. Hey, Matt, when doing a set of exercises, we need to push ourselves in order to build muscle and strength. Absolutely. Is it okay, normal for the technique to get worse as the set progresses? Can we justify it? Absolutely. Good question, Joseph. I can tell you're a thinker, and obviously you've got the chops and the experience for this. So yeah, this is what I call technical erosion, my friends. And technical erosion is where the technical proficiency of how well you do the exercise erodes with fatigue. And this is inevitable. I always tell people, I don't care if you're Captain America or whatever, I give you enough exercises, enough work to do, it's going to turn to crap sooner or later, because your technique has to erode in order to, well, actually be more efficient. And that's more of an acute efficiency rather than chronic efficiency. So if I said you have to do 1 million push-ups today, eventually you're going to do push-ups that are pretty sorry looking push-ups, because you're not interested in doing good push-ups. You're interested in just doing lots of push-ups. And yeah, that's an adjustment you can and should make according to your circumstances. If I was like, all right, you're going to get, $10 for every push-up you do, then you better believe I'm going to do push-ups all day long, and they're going to be pretty crappy looking push-ups, but I'm getting paid. I don't care about how good the push-up is. I'm just getting paid, right? So when we are experiencing technical erosion, there's a couple things we need to be paying attention to. One is, how well is that erosion linked to your objective of your training? Now, if your objective is endurance and burning out the muscle, that erosion is perfectly okay, because it just means you're testing that endurance and that stamina a little bit further. Furthermore, you want to make sure you're using exercises that are relatively safe if you have that erosion. Okay, so for example, a lot of times things that require a high degree of technical proficiency in order to be safe, I'm thinking things like Olympic lifting, for example. These are things that if your erosion is compromising your safety, it's probably not the best exercise to be using with a high degree of fatigue and endurance. That's why one of the general rules I've always given clients is, don't take barbell stuff to failure. Like, I can take it to, no, it's one of those things that typically people have trouble keeping safe under technical erosion. But a lot of calisthenics exercises or band work or cable work, for example, yeah, you can have the ugliest push-up in the world and you're probably still pretty safe. You'd have to really kind of mess that up in order to hurt yourself on the push-up. So if you were like, okay, I want strength and I want to build muscle, I'd be like, okay, we're going to set you on the bench press and do like a 5x5, but I don't want you going to failure. Just go really flipping heavy. And then we're just going to burn you out with push-ups on the rings, because that's going to be a safer way to go about it. It's a good way to apply the push-pull squat approach. The other thing to recognize about technical erosion is that, yes, it is inevitable, but it's also a great teaching tool. Because in the interest of self-coaching, lots of times people are like, well, what do I work on? How do I improve things? What do I take a video of yourself doing the exercise, or just even be self-aware of the exercise, and pay attention to what's eroding. So let's say you do 10 pull-ups. What is different on a technical level between your first pull-up and your 10th? Lots of times it's range of motion. You're just not getting as high. You chest to the bar on the first 3, and then you're just barely getting your chin up over. So there you go. That's what you need to work on in order to get stronger, is what is eroding, and fight against that as you keep training. And in this time of year, coming back to the holiday survival guide, a lot of us find that I can't do my normal workout routines with my partner or with my trainer or something like that. How do I self-coach? That's a really good way to go about it, is recognize how your technique is eroding under fatigue, write it down in your log, and then that can be a way for you to keep moving forward in this time without having to always have your trainer on call if you can't meet with your coach or trainer. Mariano is saying, hey, Matt, this month with so many social gatherings, I just focus on not arriving hungry and thirsty, eating delicious portion of a glass of alcohol. It's not ambitious, but it's enough for me. Absolutely, for sure. So it's the whole, don't grocery shop hungry kind of strategy. Don't put yourself in situations that leave you very vulnerable to really going off the bandwagon. If you've ever taken like self-defense courses, I'm not even saying martial arts classes, like general self-defense, like how do you just not die on the streets kind of self-defense, one of the biggest things they'll talk about and focus a lot of attention on is just not getting in those bad situations to begin with. It's like if you're someone who is walking around all kind of humble and feeble down a dark alley, saying, oh man, it's so great to have my pockets full of cash. No, you're just making yourself out to be a victim. But if you're walking with a strong strut, and someone kind of questionable looks at you and you make eye contact and you just kind of give them this glance of like, don't even try it. That goes a long way in avoiding the situation to begin with. And so that is the same thing. If you know that there are circumstances that leave you more vulnerable to things you want to avoid, don't have that vulnerability to begin with. Preventive maintenance, if you will. So have food beforehand, or if you're going in and you're like, yeah, but it's a family dinner. I'm not going to eat dinner before I eat dinner. It's like, yeah, sure, great. But make sure that you're not going in like starving and then you're just totally depriving yourself. And then it's like, oh, I had one cookie, time to clear off the plate kind of thing. And this is why a lot of times people get into the yo-yo status of this time of year. Where I was like, okay, I went and I had this big family dinner and I ate a bunch of cookies and stuff. And now I'm just going to do nothing as far as my diet goes, where I'm just going to eat super clean. I'm going to do a ton of fasting and I'm just going to eat nothing but celery and bone broth and stuff for the next several days. And as a result, now those stressors build up. And then you go to the holiday office party and you're starving and you're craving sugar and candy and sweets like crazy. And you clear off another plate of cookies. So I know it's counterintuitive, but I'm always telling people like keep, a little bit of ice cream in the fridge or some little chocolates or something, at home or so. What are the things that are a constant temptation for you? Have a little bit every single day. So then when you go to the party, you're not thinking, oh my gosh, they've got cookies. It's like, oh, cookies. Not really feeling it right now. Maybe a little later because you haven't been depriving yourself too much. I know it seems a little counterintuitive, but deprivation is one of the biggest ways that we make ourselves terribly vulnerable to overdoing things. Joseph Bello is saying, hey, the problem I have setting my own workouts, not sure how to structure it. And should I break up my workouts in an upper on certain days, lower, a full body? Can I do full body in 30 minutes? So on and so forth. Here's the thing, my friends, is that we often overthink workout structure like it's really that important. And honestly, it's not. For most people, it really isn't, because when you are looking at your muscles, particularly we're trying to train them for strength or muscle and whatnot, I always say muscles are like nails. Carpenters don't look at a nail and they're like, all right, what's my routine here? Now, should I hit that 3 times and then take a swig of coffee, and then hit the nail 3 times? No, wait, okay. Hold on. What if I hit the nail 4 times and then I walk around it twice talking to other coworkers? No, wait. Should I walk counterclockwise or clockwise around the nail? We're overthinking the details. Here's the bottom line. Just hit the damn muscles. I don't care how you do it. If you blast the hell out of your legs, that's all that needs to be done. I don't care if it's a full body or split routine, or if you're doing squats versus lunges or high volume or low volume or whatever. Just hit the damn things. And when you're like, well, how can I do that? Well, how do you want to do it? Literally, how do you want to do it? What exercises suit you best? What do you feel just like, well, if I do lunges, I get my heart rate up and it's just so hard to get going. I can get my legs worked, but man, I really like my legs work like crazy if I do like split squats. Well, there's your answer. Let your experience guide you. But when it comes to your workout structure, literally just whatever you want will probably work. Because I know there's a lot of stuff out there. This all began with the bodybuilding magazines back in the 80s and 90s. Like, okay, now this magazine's out and you got to work out this particular way and you got to do it this way. And here's a way to definitely grow your biceps. You know how you grow your biceps? Blast the mother living hell out of your biceps. I don't care what exercise you do. I don't care how you do it. I don't care if it's a split or push or pull or up or lower or whatever. Just nail the damn thing. And the bodybuilding magazines were like, oh, no, you got to do it this particular way. You got to do it on these days in this exact way. No, it's all window dressing. It's all packaging to make you think that they're providing value that honestly is really not there. So I would say just do it however you want. And if you're like, well, does that mean I only do it once a week? Well, try it. And you're going to get a lot of good feedback right off the bat. I'm like, well, once a week just doesn't feel like as much. Great, twice a week. There's your feedback. There's your information. That's all you need to go off of. And I've got tons of workout templates and stuff in the new push-pull squat program that's coming out. It's got tons of templates just to get started, but I'm not ever going to tell someone this is how you should structure your workouts, because that's me just guessing. Roll a, Dungeons and Dragons double-sided die. How many sets should I do? 7. Okay, great. It's like, that's literally no more than what I'm basing it off of. That's why my workouts are more objective based. Get whatever number of sets you can with a good degree of proficiency. Once your ability to do the exercise is starting to tank, you're done. That's it. But again, anytime I give you any sort of strict structured approach, it's just guesswork on my part. And I know that feels like guesswork for you because it may be. But the great thing about this whole exercise thing is it's really hard to mess this stuff up. It really is. There's that idea out there of like, you got to hit that nail just right in order to make it. No, just nail the damn thing. And it's probably going to work for you. And you're probably going to figure out just through experience, yeah, this is good, but I think I'm better off doing it this other way. Great, do it that way. Whatever way that is, because your experience will tell you a lot that's really effective for you. You learn through experience. On Z1, how's it going, my friend? Hey, Matt, been applying isometric exercises for push, pull, and push for every set in my push-pull squat exercise. The results are just amazing. Love to hear that. Great. Strengths, getting better, muscle engagement, getting better. Fantastic. Very, very good. I'm very happy to hear that. So isometrics are one of those things you can apply many different ways. And it sounds to me like you're kind of supersetting between dynamic and isometric, which is something I'm a huge fan of. If you're ever feeling like your workouts are getting stale, my friends, do that. Get like a, WorldFit ISO trainer. Again, link is down below, shameless plug, but do an overcoming isometric and a dynamic exercise of your choice, superset it. So you could do an isometric row holding for 10 seconds, then jump up on the pull-up bar, shake it out a little bit, get your muscles a little bit of a rest, and watch your exercises, or rather feel your exercises transform from doing that. It is really, really amazing what those isometrics do for you. Luke R is asking, hey, Matt, have you had any experience with dealing with tennis elbow? It sucks. Yes, it does. Want to keep training, but hesitant to exacerbate it and have it linger for longer. Appreciate the channel. Thank you very much, Luke. Yeah, I mean, that sort of thing is very, very common, especially in the calisthenics world. And a large part of it comes from a lack of back tension. So the overcoming isometric I just mentioned is a really good way of going about it. Because when we do many of our exercises, we want to be using our back for stability, which is just pulling everything in and down in a very, very strong approach. And a lot of us, well, frankly, we suck at doing that just because our tension control and our muscle engagement just isn't really that good on the backside. And so as a result, we have a slight kyphotic posture, maybe a real big kyphotic posture where the shoulders are elevated, protracted, and we have internal rotation of the arms. Even if it's a few degrees, that can really build up a lot of stress in the elbows for rowing, pull-ups, barbell rows, any type of pulling exercise or pushing exercise. So that's why the extension chain is so important, where we are pulling the shoulders down and back, bridge work, table bridges, deadlifts, isometric deadlifts, kettlebell swings, all that stuff that teaches your body to pull the back in and down is so crucial at creating a better stability for your shoulders. And better stability for your shoulders means less stress in the shoulder joint, less stress in your elbows, less stress in your wrists, and more importantly, a hell of a lot more tension in the muscles you're trying to train, aka your traps, your lats, your chest, shoulders, bis, tris, and yes, even your forearms to a large degree. So now that you have it though, the thing that sucks about injuries like that is even if you get it correct, you're still going to have pain because you're injured. If you sprain your ankle, you could have the best walking gait in the world. It's still going to hurt. So you got to let that sucker heal. Let pain be your guide. Don't do things that hurt it. If something hurts it, don't do that. Play around with things that are going to be primarily a different grip, maybe a little bit lighter, higher rep, but that's perfectly okay. And make sure that you're giving yourself time to heal, because unfortunately, those things just take forever to heal. I know it's frustrating, but best of luck to you. I know it's a tough one. Joseph Bello, I do 3-day workouts. This is why I like this page. You keep it simple. Absolutely. My friends, simple is the way to go. I'm still writing the outline for my next big book that I'm writing, which is kind of my manifesto. And I'm kind of going around with different ideas. One of the ideas I'm playing around with is just the simple title that fitness should be a lot easier than we're making it. I mean, a lot easier and a lot simpler, because there's so many ideas out there that are trying to convince you that this is supposed to be really hard and it's supposed to be really complicated. But my friends, this is not rocket science. Yeah, sure, there's science and anatomy and things to know and understand, of course. But really, this stuff is not supposed to be hard and complicated. And coming back to what I was saying about efficiency is when things are more efficient, they become simpler. And when they are simpler, they're easier to do. And if anything will increase your chances of achieving higher levels of success that you can maintain, it's find ways to make this stuff a lot easier. How do you make a healthy diet easier? How do you make your workouts easier? Well, for one thing, having that too structured program isn't going to make it easier. Having more of a flexible approach is. If you wake up one day and your legs are screaming at you and they're tired and they're sore because you went skiing yesterday for the first time and you've got leg workout today, don't do your leg workout. Well, yeah, isn't that kind of being a wimp? Isn't that kind of being, a wuss? No, that's being smart. That's being intelligent. You want to make things easier. Would it be easier if you worked your legs today or waited a few days for your legs to recover and you hit them on Thursday? Well, it'd be easier on Thursday. Well, yeah, so do that. Would it be easier to eat healthy if you had only a little bit of treat once in a while, or if you completely deprived yourself and never allowed yourself to eat anything until you went overboard at the Chinese buffet? Which one's going to be easier for you to maintain a healthy diet? Everything about fitness should be easier. And if anything, I'm starting to realize that my mission through the Red Delta Project is basically to make this fitness thing a whole lot easier. Because it is supposed to be a lot easier than I think we often make it. Jeff Stockdale, it's good to see you, my friend. Hey, Matt, if your grip fails before your muscles on pull-ups, because we're talking about grip again, is doing them one at a time until hitting muscular failure a good strategy? I wouldn't do that, actually. I don't think it's a bad strategy, but if your grip is failing, refer to the question that I answered earlier. You might be just death gripping that bar, maybe a little bit lighter on that sort of grip. It could be also that your grip is just the weak link and it just needs to catch up. But what I would do is if you're noticing grip and biceps are just getting blasted on these pull-ups and my lats, not quite so much, give yourself a finisher afterwards where you're doing cable pull downs or, pull downs on suspension straps or a front lever or something. Just blast that muscle group that you're feeling isn't quite getting the attention it needs. Just do that as a separate move afterwards and just blast it then. That's what I would do. And also make sure your shoulders are getting packed. So that way you're getting your back to really engage during that workout. Joseph Bello is, sorry. Sorry, I already answered that. I'm going all over the place. All right, let me go here. Ron is saying, hey, Matt, been following your isometric workouts for a while now. Good for you, Ron. Along with feeling more fit, it's helped tremendously with my stress and anxiety. Thanks for everything you do. I know what you mean, Ron. I think a lot of us, we relate to, I used to call this angry tension, when you get really pissed off and you just you just want to have this cathartic outpouring of energy. And a lot of times people find this from punching bags or just going out and just running like crazy through the parking lot or whatever. I think it's the Fight Club mentality, right? We've got such a subdued aspect of physical expression in our culture. We're not supposed to fight. We're not supposed to yell and scream and punch and kick, and for good reason. Don't go out beating people up in bars and stuff. But at the same time, we still have this cathartic need to express a lot of energy through anger or frustration or even joy. Sometimes that happens too. And we're so subdued. So overcoming isometrics is just one of those things. It's one of the few areas I know of in life where you can just be like, I want you to put everything you've got into this type of training. I used to have the same thing with bike racing too. whenever I was having hard days or going through a rough patch in life, I always found that it was so cathartic to do a bike race because they literally were like, okay, you're on your mountain bike. Don't hurt anybody, but you can't possibly push yourself hard enough for this. And it was just this outpouring of energy and anger and angst and joy sometimes if I was feeling good too. And it was just so good and therapeutic. And I don't think we get enough of that in our modern day society. I mean, back in the day, they used to have scream therapy, which was literally you go out in the woods or something and you just scream your head off. And people are like, oh, I needed that. Thank you very, kind of. And that's exactly what we're trying to do is just this raw of energy. And maybe during this time of year, we've got so much stress. I think it's probably a good idea to do things. So we've been talking a lot about overcoming isometrics here, folks. And if you're new to the channel, check out the Overcoming Isometrics playlist that I have with a lot of exercise examples and also some of the equipment that we were talking about, like the ISO trainer from WorldFit. It's like $35. It's one of the best isometric pieces of equipment you can be using. And it's a great way to get started with that sort of thing. Valentin, it's good to see you, my friend. Your avatar is on the side. I like that. Very fun. Hello, Matt. How lean do you think you should be to begin trying skills? The stronger I get, also, the more I weigh. So I'm still stuck with the basics. Yeah, it's a good question there. So, I mean, always start whenever you can. Like, don't put stuff off. And that's another mentality that's very prevalent this time of year of, okay, I want to lose weight. I want to be in shape. I want to build muscle and stuff. I'm going to wait until the end of the year. I'm going to wait until New Year's. I'm going to wait until things quiet down at work or whatever the case. Don't do that, my friends. Don't do that. Just if you want to work on something, just go. Just start, get enough information to start and just start. Because skills, like any other aspect of progressive calisthenics, has levels that you can start at regardless of your weight, regardless of what your level of strength and skill is. So don't be like, oh, I need to get leaner to practice skills. No. If anything, I always tell people when it comes to bodyweight training, your weight is now an asset rather than a liability. Because a lot of times people will treat a bit of belly fat or weight as a liability. Your doctor says you got to lose weight, it's bad for your health. Insurance companies and all, you're like, gotta lose weight and everything. So when people come to me and they're like, I'd love to do calisthenics, but I'm heavier. I'm like, great. That's awesome. That's even better. And they'd be like, why? It's like, because you're heavy. You now have a lot of weight to work against. And of course, we just use whatever regressions or progressions they need with the exercises to fit their level. But it's like, now your weight is actually something that's going to challenge you. That's awesome. So I extend the same attitude to you. Great, you're heavier. Awesome. That's going to make your skills even stronger. Will being leaner help? Absolutely, of course. But it's probably not going to make that much of a difference for you, because you will lose some weight. And yes, 5 or 10 pounds can make a big difference with these sorts of things, but ultimately has more to do with your actual strength and your coordination in the skills. So chances are, if you're getting stuck, I would see that as a proficiency challenge rather than a weight challenge. You may not be engaging some key muscles or using something about stability that's holding you back. Like, for example, with the front lever, a lot of times people have trouble retracting their shoulders enough and engaging their lats strongly enough to be able to do a front lever or to progress it. If you weigh 5 pounds less, will it help? Sure. But it's probably not the thing you really need if that proficiency of your muscle activation is lacking. It's still going to suck, even though you're lighter. You may just get your legs out another 2 or 3 inches at best. So I would say look to the proficiency of your skills. And then, of course, you lose the weight, manage your diet, and all these other things as a secondary thing. But I wouldn't put your eggs into that hope of, oh, if I lose the weight, then I'm going to be an awesome, planche master. It's like, there's a lot of skinny guys struggling with the planche as well. All right. So getting to the end of the year here, don't be afraid to be more creative, because ultimately, my friends, remember that what you're trying to do has never been done in the history of the world before. You're losing weight, you're building muscle, you're trying to get your skills or whatever. No one's ever accomplished those objectives in your circumstances. Yes, of course, lots of people have done it before you, but nobody's done it with your circumstances, your body, your lifestyle, your abilities, your genetics, and so on. So ultimately, all progress and results in fitness do come from a creative aspect to it. of experimentation and problem solving, saying, okay, let me look at this. All right, if I'm struggling with X, how do I figure this out? Because yes, the internet's a great resource. Yes, I've got tons of videos on things to give you ideas, but ultimately the answers you need are going to come from your problem solving skills. And that's where you're going to get what you really need this time of year and when life gets kind of patchy. And when we throw our hands up and be like, oh, there's nothing I can do, it's just too crazy right now and stuff, we're taking away that opportunity from yourself. And you're basically saying, I'm not even going to try and figure this out for myself. But the real superpower, as I alleged in a couple of previous episodes, is that problem solving is one of those things that is practically a superpower that's eroding so fast in our modern day society. Because a lot of times people are like, well, shouldn't I be led by the hand through these tumultuous challenges in life? And sure, coaches are great and ideas on YouTube videos and social media is helpful. But ultimately, the solutions and things you need are going to come from your own creative problem solving skills. And when you do, you're going to have the answers that are far better than anything else out there. I've got my push-pull squat program coming out. I've got ideas I'm telling you here on the podcast. But ultimately, these are just ideas and general recommendations, but they're really not going to solve your problems. What will solve your problems is taking ideas and stuff, applying them, gaining experience, assessing, contemplating them, being creative, and then saying, oh, if I notice this thing about myself, that if I do X, Y, and Z, I get a better workout. Oh, okay, I'm going to start to apply that. And that's where you're going to get the real things that you need, the real solutions and problem-solving skills are going to take you to the next level. And the more you have those problem-solving abilities, the more you're going to be able to have that adaptation when life inevitably gets more tumultuous yet again. Because remember that it's actually technically impossible to take a break from this stuff, right? The processes of mother and human nature, of which are really actually in control of your health and fitness, because you're not in control. You can't control your health and fitness through diet. You can't control it through exercise. We can only influence those processes with our diet and exercise. So those processes are always ongoing. Your body's always adapting to stimuli that's coming into it every single second of every single day. So when you're exercising, what you're doing is you're taking that process and you're just kind of gently influencing it in the direction you want to go. So if you say, okay, I'm going to take a break from the gym. I'm not going to even try to eat very well right now. I'm not even going to try and get any type of exercise in. All you're doing is saying, okay, process, just go wherever. I don't care. You can't actually stop. It's not like you're driving in your car and you can pull off to the side of the road and say, all right, I'm just going to sit here and wait for the storm to pass, and then I'm going to get back on the road again. You can't technically do that. So when you go take a break, you're not taking the car and putting it off to the side of the road. You're just taking your hands off the wheel and saying, all right, I don't care where it goes. I'm heading towards a cliff or towards a grove of trees or whatever, but I'm just no longer trying to have any sort of say in where I'm headed. That's what taking a break really does. And if that sounds scary, I hope so. And that's one of the reasons why I never actually take a break, because even if you can do something to any degree when it comes to diet and exercise, it's still giving you at least one hand on the wheel and ensuring you're going in the direction you want to go in. Because if you don't, then you're just basically losing control. And as I said earlier, that's one of the things that we get into fitness for, is we want more control over these things. But ultimately, things are going to be happening one way or the other. All right, let's get to a last couple of questions here before finishing off. Frotan Inferno, it's good to see you, my friend. Hey, Matt, when might your push-pull squat program come out? Will it be PDF? And what would you say is the best way to progress to leg raises or build core strength to be able to do them without bending your back? Oh, a lot of good questions. Well, it's a work in progress. I'll keep you guys up to date, so make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. I know, shameless plug there, but it should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. It will be exclusively PDF in electronic format, largely because this is my new quick read series on the RDP library that you can find over at Amazon.com, but it's also at the RDP merch store, where you can get the direct PDFs if you don't want it in Kindle. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of links in it as well. I could put it in paperback, but one, it's too small. It'd be like a small little tiny paperback. It's not really worth printing up. But a lot of the value of the program is links that take you to things that I need to reference. And so you can't do that on paperback, of course. So the quick read series that I have on RDP now, these are small books with a single simple idea that can really make a big difference in your diet and exercise program, like calorie hacking, my scoreboard progression log, and so on. And so these things are, they're available on Amazon, and the PDFs on the Teespring merch store where you get my t-shirts and stuff, but they're also much cheaper too. I think they're like $2 or $3 for each one, but they're a quick read, consume thing. They're like 20 to 30 pages in most cases. Push, pull, squat probably is going to be closer to 40, just because it's got a lot more content to it. But yeah, it's all PDF, and that's why, because paper isn't going to work very well. You can have it on your phone and access things on your phone and stuff like that. And then finally, leg raises without bending your back. Are you talking about flexing or extension? Because when you're doing leg raises, I encourage people to flex their back as much as they can. Because remember that your abs do not attach to your legs. When you do leg raises, your abs do not pick up your legs. They pick up your pelvis, right? It's a lumbar flexion. That's what your abs do. Your legs are your weight that you're lifting up. So it's more about picking up your pelvis than your actual legs. So you do want to pick up your pelvis. You want to curl your lumbar spine a little bit. Usually with lying leg raises, I tell people, pick your tailbone up off the ground if you can. Get that lumbar flexion, because that's what your abs actually do, is they control that lumbar flexion, and they get that type of posterior pelvic tilt going. That's what your abs actually do. So you do want that motion. If you're having extension going on, that could be that your psoas muscles pulling a little too hard and you don't have enough tension in your abs to counteract that motion. So you want to regress the exercise. So if you're doing lying leg raises, bend your knees. You know, a good way to kind of learn this motion is lie on your back and put like one of those inflatable Swiss balls between your legs. So that way you're wrapping your legs around the ball and the ball's on the ground, and you just pick the ball up. So your legs are locked in place and you're picking like this. And primarily the only way to do that is a little bit in your hips, but mostly through your lumbar flexion. So you want to have that ability to control that flexion, because that's what your abs do. Leland Thorpe saying, hey, Matt, could you say a word about resistance curve and suspension straps? Oh, very good. I feel like I lose resistance quickly with some moves like bicep curls and Y raises. Yeah, exactly. So, of course, when you were doing this, your body is largely at an angle, right? And so if you're leaning back at that angle, I've got weight on my hands because I'm pulling on it. But as you come up, once I get up to, perpendicular to the floor, weight goes to my toes. There's no weight on my hands. That's when the straps sag. And that's why one of the big S's in TRX culture is no sag. You don't want that sag. So a couple ways that you can prevent this. One is you just use a shorter range of motion. So if I'm doing rear flies and I come up to here and I'm standing upright, then just don't pull back as far. It's perfectly fine to do that. You're not losing much on that. But one of the best things you could do is have more extension in your back. So like so, it's kind of like a little bit of a bridge. So your glutes and your hamstrings are engaged, you're extending your spine. And so now as I come up, I'm upright, but I'm still leaning back to a fair degree. The other thing you could do is manage the length of the straps. So if the straps are too long, you're going to come up real quickly. So you may want to shorten the straps a little bit. Nope, that's the opposite. Sorry, I misspoke. You want the straps to be long because when the straps are longer, you're going to spend more time at that angle. But if they're short, then you quickly pop yourself up and you're going to be at that upright position where you lose the resistance. So longer straps, arch the back, and maybe use a bit of a shorter range of motion to stay within that resistance curve. And then finally, Pedro Ian, hey Matt, after which stage of pushing strength should I start training handstand progressions? Well, you could start whenever you like, of course. Handstands, it depends on where you're starting with the progression aspect of it. I mean, one of the ways I get people started with progressions with handstands is the bear crawl. And most people can start with that pretty quickly. I'll have them start with, a cat-cow exercise, and then I'll just say, okay, straighten your legs into a downward dog position, and then you're crawling. And you just, you're alternating which a hand has more of your weight on it, and you're just leaning on your hands. So that's a handstand progression. You're just basically getting your weight on your hands. So you got that. Then, of course, I move on to pike push-ups, or even pike style push-ups where their hands are on an elevated surface. So I'm usually not too much of a fan of actual handstand work, to be perfectly honest. I would almost always rather give somebody dynamic pike push-up style exercises over handstand stuff. Unless you have a goal of, I want to be able to do handstands, which is awesome, great. But I've always been more of a perspective of, let's be honest, we want to build up our shoulders. I want bigger arms, I want bigger shoulders, and I want a bigger upper back. Okay, great. Yes, handstands can do that, but you're probably going to have a hell of a lot an easier time doing dynamic work just because you've got the motion going on and you're working against progressive resistance versus endlessly doing handstands, which is the same level of resistance. And you're working a skill, and that's fine, but you're not working the work capacity of the muscle very well, of how much tension is in the muscle or how long you can hold the tension for. So you're not really looking at strength or building muscle from that. You're just trying to get good at the exercise, which if that's your goal, awesome, great, go for it. But it's usually not the goal for me or people I'm training. They're like, yeah, I just want to get bigger and stronger. Okay, yeah, I don't think handstands are a good way to do that because most people don't have the strength and the proficiency to be able to really test their muscles that way. But they will with pike push-ups. And so using the pike push-up progressions, where your hands are on an elevated surface, coming down, pushing yourself up. Basically, it's a shoulder press. Like when you're doing barbell shoulder presses, same exact thing. And then you bring your hands lower, just like you're doing regular push-ups. Then you're doing them on the floor. Then you're doing them with maybe your feet elevated up on a box. Then you're maybe deficit where you're doing on elevated surfaces so you can get even more range of motion. Then your feet go higher and higher and higher. And eventually you're practically doing a handstand push-up. And once you're doing regular, practically handstand push-ups with your feet up against the wall or something, then I tell people work on your handstands, because nothing's going to make handstands a hell of a lot stronger and more proficient than be able to do a more advanced dynamic version of that position to begin with. So that's usually my approach. But again, it's a little different if the handstand itself is your actual goal. But I still start people on pike push-ups and stuff. So usually once people are doing pike push-ups with their feet are on the ground, and they're really leaning their weight on and they can get 10, then we usually start working on kick-up handstands if they're interested in that sort of thing. Stay on track and say thoughts on the benefits of doing a lot of calisthenics weight training for middle or long distance running. Very good, very good. For one, yes, absolutely. Strength training for the endurance athlete is very important. Coming as a former bike racer myself, definitely need strength training. However, you don't need a lot of it. And that's a big mistake that a lot of endurance athletes take, is they spend a lot of time basically working out like bodybuilders or CrossFit athletes. And it's like, what are you doing? You're a runner. Go out and run. Because remember, as an athlete, strength training is a supplement to your actual sport. It's kind of like taking a ton of protein powders and vitamin pills, but your diet is crap. It's like, well, I'm taking all these supplements. Like, yeah, they're supposed to be a relatively supplemental small part of what you're doing. But if your diet is crap because all you're eating is protein powder, good luck. So we want to have some strength training, but it's probably not going to be a lot. That's why my book, Bodyweight Training for Cycling, which also applies to running and cross-country skiing and all that, is the programs in there are really small, like 3 moves. And it's not really big, because the whole point of that is I want your strength training to take as little time and energy as possible, because you're going to spend a lot of your time and energy running distance, cycling, all those sorts of things, because endurance training takes up a lot of time and a lot of energy, and you're just not going to have much left over for strength training. So in that book, I created a very simple approach of these are the 3 moves you want to focus on. If you've got a little more time and energy, here's 2 more. If you really have a lot of time and energy, here's even more. But you're not supposed to be doing a lot of strength training as an endurance athlete. You want to cover your core and your legs, and your extension chain for the most part, and be done with it. And throw in some push-ups if you feel like it. But for the most part, it's all going to be in the lower body and the core. And that's what those focus on. So, in many cases, I would even say a lot of endurance athletes could probably get away with no more than a couple of 15-minute strength sessions a week, because that'll cover you pretty good. In all honesty, because you just got to make sure you're keeping your muscles strong, keeping things connected, and avoiding any sort of imbalances. Joseph is asking, hey, Matt, how did you come up with the Be Fit and Live Free at the end of your videos? I addressed this last week. Addressed this with a longer story. I won't tell it here, but basically I learned very early on that, fitness and freedom, personal lifestyle freedom, have always kind of been at odds with one another. And that if you want to be in better shape, you've got to give more of your life away to the gym and the diets and make more compromises. And so I started to devise methods and approaches in a newsletter that I was writing on how you can have both. You can be fit and not have to be shackled down to, tedious diets and exercise programs. So one newsletter I said, at the end, it was just kind of like a Be Fit, Live Free, my friends. And I was like, oh, I like that. And it's just stuck ever since. Last one here, Earth Light, asking real quick, hey, Matt, I have been practicing low rep, high skill calisthenics with great progress. That's the way you do it. But now I want some high rep push-pull legs program for the next month. Am I going to lose my progress? Greetings from Greece. Good question. Short answer, if you're not practicing your skills, yes, you will lose steps with that. Because if you don't use it, you lose it. And remember that there's no such thing as any type of training that's going to make you 100% proficient at anything else, because adaptation to functional demand is always specific to that demand. And this goes for everything. It goes for strength, it goes for endurance, it goes for mobility, stability, tension control, everything. So that's why, even though you want to focus on push-pull squat, like in my new program that I'm coming out with, and I've got the daily workouts on the YouTube channel that I highly recommend you start off with, that you still engage those skills to some degree, just at least to maintain it. Just throw it in as a part of your warm-up. Just kind of hit the thing every once in a while to make sure that you're still engaging your muscles in that specific way to get your nervous system loaded up with that sort of thing. Because yeah, if you don't hit a front lever for the next 3 months, for example, and then try and hit it, yeah, you may very well have stronger lats and shoulders, and your core may be stronger, but you're probably going to lose a step on that front lever. It might be stronger, maybe, probably not. So I say don't take the risk. Still get in just a playful approach to those skills. As you're warming up or just someday you're like, I wonder how my front lever is doing or my planche or whatever. Yeah, just hit it a couple of times, because it doesn't take much to maintain these things for most part. It's something that you can just get in once or twice here and it's still going to be maintained pretty easily. You don't need to put in nearly as much work to maintain progress as you did to make the progress to begin with. All right, folks, it's been over an hour. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. Don't forget, check out the new push-pull squat video series on the YouTube channel. Link is down below, as well as the equipment resources that I mentioned, like the NOS suspension straps, the World Fit ISO trainer for isometric training as well. All that's down below. And I sincerely appreciate all the support and attention you folks have paid to me over the past hour. And we'll do this again next week. And I've got more videos and stuff coming out very shortly on the YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribed so that way you don't miss any of the videos in the new push-pull squat program. Have a good rest of your weekend, folks. Till then, be fit and live free.